Hello, guys. Welcome to another day. This is the Truthful African Child. I hope you guys have subscribed. If you've not, please kindly hit the subscription button and turn on the notification button as well. And also give us a thumbs up. It really help a lot with the algorithm. Okay, so today I'll be talking about an important topic that much emphasis and light is not actually being shed on it, but let me try my best to do a little justice to it. And this is about let me look for the right word. It's about erasing the identity of our roots, erasing or diminishing or truncating the identity of Africans. And I wouldn't say it's deliberate, but it's happening. You know, families in Africa, are sending off their children, their relatives. They are sending them off to foreign countries, outside Africa, and this is happening in in numbers that you can't actually imagine. And sometimes it's even state sponsored, community sponsored. You know, families come together, sell off properties or a piece of land and sponsor some family members, siblings, children, just sponsor them abroad with the hope of them giving them financial freedom, financial liberation. When they go there, working some kind of jobs, menial jobs mostly, and some white collar jobs, 9 to 5, and then you send the money back home to to help the family financially. While this may look like a very good and harmless gesture, a way of you know building up a family and supporting a family financially, but there's a downside to it, a very scary downside to it. At the long run, what is happening is we are planting or we are creating a future tsunami. You know, that's by the time this monster that is being created now, by the time this monster comes to life, there's no taming it, there's no holding it back. Before now, Africans are known to be family oriented in the sense that it's like a cycle. Families hold hands. You support this person, you support this person, you try to the best of your ability to give your children the best upbringing you can, you know, in hope that they become your uh, retirement benefits, retirement pension. You know, you take care of your children so that at your old age, your children will in turn take care of you. It's kind of circle of life in Africa. It's kind of an orientation built around the family tradition, and it's been working for centuries. You know, unlike what you have in the West, where, like I've always stated in this channel, I've always mentioned and told you guys, we are living in kind of matrix universe where everything is programmed. So in the West, people are being programmed to work and just keep working. You know, you work all the days of your life. Only about a percentage, like 1% or 0.5%, actually have this financial freedom where they get to spend good quality times with their families and but the rest are just programmed to just keep working. At the end of the day, by the time at old age, you now realize you actually lived your life to work and just keep working. So what this entails is you would no longer have that time, you know, to complete that cycle of life of having to take care of your aged parents, you know, at their old and fragile age. That is why you have so many old people's home or retirement home, like they call it in the West, in the Western countries, in Europe, you know, in America, where your parents get aged instead of figuring out how to look out for them due to your busy nature, 9 to 5, always working. You now uh, get them administered into one of the retirement homes or old people's home, and then you pay some kind of monthly or yearly uh, charges for strangers to look after your aged parents. You know, at that time, what you guys are now waiting for is any day you get a call from the old person, oh, your social person passed away, because you only get to visit them. You have visitations like maybe once or twice in a week, or once or twice in a month, or a few months in a year, depending on how your work schedule is. You know, your children don't get to bond well with your aged parents. You yourself don't really get to bond well with them. This is crap. Naturally, that was not how life was designed to be. One of the benefits or one of the reasons humans have children or have kids is so that these kids become your retirement benefits. They take care of you at old age when your legs, your bones, your body becomes too weak to cater for you. Your children become your legs, they become your hands, and they become your sight in the days when everything becomes blurry. But the West is changing the narrative, and some Africans are following lead, and they think this is, oh, no, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. There was this, like say, social experiment or a kind of a documentary I saw one time where a guy took out his time. He visited several old people's home and had one-on-one interaction with these senior citizens, there in the West. And 98% of them were not even happy they're there. It was like a prison to them. It's like a prison. But because even they themselves embraced it, or they might have done the same thing to their own old folks, to their own parents, they have nothing to complain about. They've accepted it as, okay, this is where I'm going to stay till my dying days. So it's different here in Africa. And I keep saying this all the time. It's not everything that you see the West do, you embrace. It's not everything. You have to find a way. You have to structure your life in such a way that you'll be there for your parents. In fact, it's the joy of life when you get to care for your parents at their old age. You're paying them back. You're paying them back. See it as a tradition so that your children will also watch and learn. And in time to come, your children will see it as their own responsibility to take care of you, because the joy of living is you getting old. Everybody should get old. Everybody's supposed to get old. And at your old age, you're not supposed to be neglected or abandoned. Your children are supposed to be the ones looking after you. That's why most people get to adopt children. You think people just adopt children so that those adopted kids can now render them into old people's home or retirement home at their old age? No. It's kind of a retirement benefit. It's not everything that the West grooms that we Africans should latch onto and emulate. Some of these things are BS. They are not worth emulating. Okay, let me even take you guys through this the harms, and the dangers and the tsunami I mentioned about migration. There's a big migration happening in Africa. There's a big exodus. People are moving out of Africa and migrating to the West, to do jobs they wouldn't have even thought about years ago, centuries ago, you know, but they are conveniently doing it because the West, Europe, and America, they've succeeded in making Africa a kind of that's how you improvise a place. You make a place so poor that people who are there would, in fact, they would rather be anywhere else than there. That is the situation Africa has found itself. Africa is the way it is today, not because of the fault of Africans, but the fault of those who have pushed so hard to keep Africa down where it is, so that you will be the one begging to do what you would have done in chains centuries ago as a slave. You're now begging to do it willingly. Willingly, you go to visa office, go to embassies, and beg to go over there to do works that your ancestors wouldn't have even ventured or thought about centuries ago. But because these guys have kept you guys so down, improvised, poor, malnourished, mentally drained, that you can't think of any other thing. You just want to survive. You get the point, right? And it's working. So let me take you guys through this. Families are sending off their children abroad. You know, some of them to study, and after studying, they start living there and start earning, start working there. And you can't compare the life you have there uh, overseas and abroad, these Western countries, you can't compare it to the one you have in Africa, because Africa has been so porous, so butchered, so that, man, you now see Africa like a hellhole, and you see the West like, oh, a breath of fresh air, right? Okay. Now your children go over there, start living, start working, start making money, you know, and become so comfortable, right? That place becomes their comfort zone. They send the little they can financially back home in Africa for you guys to, like, hold on to. You will now discover that they now spend most of their years there in the West than they will back in Africa. Maybe they just visit Africa during some festive periods, not off festive periods, or if there's anything like any ceremonial stuff happening, like weddings, funeral, they now just breezing. So the percentage of them coming here in Africa and them staying in Europe is like, let's say 2:8. You know, less 20% of the time they visit Africa. The remaining 80% is spent in the West. You get it? Okay. So later on, they get married, and still settle with their spouse there in the West, right? Okay. They are now the first generation of your family that is resident in the West. They now start having offsprings, their children. Their children are now the second generation, right? Their children were born there. They get used to there, get used to the West, get everywhere schooled and trained, everything in the West. So they now see Africa like a kind of how would I put it? They see Africa like a place, the place where my grandparents stay, you know. Oh, my mom, the fact they now see Africa as a story. Just like Black Americans see Africa as a story, one story. Oh, where blacks come from, the original blacks, like a story, a folk tale, a fairy tale. They see it as a story. So this second generation of your family, that is your children's children, now see here Africa as a story. Where if the parents are so thoughtful enough, they even allow them to visit once in a while. So maybe they visit Africa maybe once in a blue moon. or once or twice or three times, or but ceremonially they don't actually just visit. And when they come, they don't stay more than a week, at most 2 weeks, and they're back. A time will come, the visits will stop because they'll not be engaged in, they get into high school, start getting engaged, and they won't even, for once, even willingly want to come here. Maybe the few times they came was as a result of their parents when they were still dependent on their parents. So they were traveling as a family, the parents. Now that they're growing into teenagers and becoming independent, they wouldn't even think about it. That is the second generation. Now, what happens to the third generation? That is the children of your grandchildren. What happens? Those ones who will just even hear, they will even read about Africa, they will even come around. Are you getting the point? So, you now back home in Africa as a parent, a time will come, those houses you built, a place you used to call home before, starts becoming memories. Because by the time you're done here on earth and you pass on, only about 2% of the children that were sent abroad, that is this generation, only about 2% will actually later retire back home. Only about 2%. 2%. So the home you're building, the house you're staying, will all fade into memories. And you are likely to end your life alone. That's the obvious truth. Because let's face the reality. Your kids will only, the best they can do for you is maybe they will now pay someone like a nanny or someone, a caregiver at your old age to come around and, help you out to one or two. Because that is the lifestyle that is oftenable that they know about in the West, where people go to old people's home. But since they can't bring you down there to get into those old people's home, they'll send the money for, to get someone to take care of you. A total stranger. The worst thing that can happen to you in old age is for you to be taken care of by a total stranger. The person is doing it because he's getting paid, not because he loves you or he cares about you. Are you seeing the difference? The same thing with the workers in old people's home there in the West. They're not doing it because of the love they have for these old guys. They are doing it because they're getting paid. It's a means to an end for them. It's not out of love, but out of contract. I'm doing this and I'm getting paid. So it's a tsunami we are creating. It's a tsunami. Families these days, they even brag with it. There's a kind of bragging right. And my kids are also placed in this country, in Germany, in UK, the US, it's kind of and it's laughable. It's laughable because we are doing ourselves a huge disservice. By the time the monster we are creating comes knocking, will you have the guts to open up and answer the door? It's all good. I think this video has become longer than I always want it to be. So I'm going to just hang it up here. Until next time, please don't forget to subscribe, turn on your notification button, and give us a thumbs up, okay? Until next time, ciao.